This video is going to be about recalls. In this specific case, the recall on my Kawasaki Z900 RS SE and the front tire. I thought I also might talk about recalls in general. Good morning. I'm on my Z900 this morning. As you can saw from the thumbnail, I'm taking it in for a recall. I'm going to talk a little bit about this recall and recalls in general in this video, and to see some things that you probably, maybe you've heard of, maybe you've seen. You know, you always hear rumors on bikes, how many recalls they have and things like that. So you need to stay tuned for that. Meerkat. Some people think recalls are really a bad thing. Don't get me wrong, they're not a good thing. You know, you're not looking for, oh yeah, I wish I could get a recall letter. But it's better to get a recall letter than have a manufacturer just ignore the problem and let you suffer through it and go out of warranty, then you have to pay for getting it fixed. So yeah, recalls aren't necessarily a bad thing. It's a good thing that manufacturers do them. And quite a few of the manufacturers, most of the recalls come from the manufacturers without being forced to by the government. You're going to get notified about a recall, usually from the manufacturer. In this case, it was Kawasaki. They're going to send you a recall notice. It's has a national highway in the United States. It has an NHTSA recall number, and it's going to list your make and model of your bike, and it's going to have a title what it's for. In this case, it was front tire replacement. It's going to have your name, and it's going to have your serial number and everything like that. In this recall notice, it's going to tell you what you need to do. In this case, it's going to tell you to call the dealer, and then once you call the dealer is going to ask you about some information. They may want your VIN. They may want, in this case, it was the tire identification code to make sure that your tire falls into the category. Then at that particular time, the dealer will schedule you a time to come in to have this done. So I'm going to pop into my Kawasaki dealership here in town. It's Carl's Cycles. This is actually the first time I've bought a motorcycle directly from them. I bought some of the bikes that other people have, secondhand. But I think the bike only has on it, what is it? 1,090 miles. It doesn't have a lot of miles on it. Only bad thing about this recall is I had to get up early in the morning to take it in at 9 o'clock. Back in 2021, October 2021, I queried the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration's database, and I did about almost 5 years, from 2016 all the way up to October of 2021, on 13 different brands of motorcycles to look at the number of recalls they had and the number of complaints they had. So I laid them out in like a little bar graph. The orange line would be the number of complaints. There were 852 complaints and 865 recalls that I measured. And when you see the number of
complaints, the orange line being higher than the number of recalls, that usually indicates that the manufacturer is a little slow in listening to the complaints and doing the recalls. What you want to see is the number of recalls, the blue line, to be a little higher than the orange line. What you notice in this one is both three of the companies, Harley, Honda, and KTM, had more complaints than they had recalls, which indicates to me that they're a little slow on the uptake in doing anything. Honda sometimes does theirs without recalls and does little service bulletins. BMW was dead equal. But what I'm going to show you next is this is kind of a summary of where the manufacturers rank in terms of best to worst, in terms of recalls, then complaints. Starting from the top to the best to the worst. The best was Royal Enfield. You can see the actual number of recalls on the preceding slide. Second was Moto Guzzi. Tied for third was Suzuki, Aprilia, and KTM. KTM, one of the fool's gold here. They didn't have a lot of recalls, but they had a tremendous amount of complaints, so they didn't take a lot of action. Kawasaki 6, Honda 7, Yamaha 8th, Triumph is 9. We have Indian 10, Ducati 11, Harley Davidson 12, and BMW. Yes, BMW was last and worst in the number of recalls. Okay, next, when you look at complaints, the fewest number of complaints was Aprilia, Moto Guzzi, then Royal Enfield, Suzuki, Kawasaki, Yamaha, Indian, Triumph, KTM had a lot of complaints, a lot more complaints than they had recalls. Ducati, Honda, BMW, even though they had a lot of recalls, the complaints were about equal, so they were on top of it. But the big difference is here on Harley Davidson is they were near the bottom on recalls, but they were far worse on the number of complaints from the customers. What I did also, I just kind of broke down all the recalls in different categories, so you can see that the front and rear brake problems were by far across all of the brands were the biggest hitter on everything. So then also did is break it down on the most recalled models. By the way, I own one of those models. You can see more of this I'll put a link to the actual whole video that I did on this, give you a little bit better idea. But what you can see is that Kawasaki really did pretty well on both the number of recalls and complaints. They seem to have a little bit more complaints than recalls early on, but in the last couple of years seem to have gotten their act together and getting out and doing those recalls. Anyone can access the NHTSA database and get information. This information is already a couple years old, so I'm pretty sure there's been some changes. Generally, the recalls lag behind on the models years of the bike, so you may not see a recall on the 2024 listed there until 2025 or something like that. One of the things I wanted to do is kind of reconcile the recalls and complaints and make it a ratio. So basically you take the complaints, divide it by the number of recalls, because they if you look, the lower the percentage of that is, the more likely is that manufacturer took care of the problem before either the customer got it or was on top of it immediately. So the lower the percentage of that ratio, the better the manufacturer. So here are all the top 13, from 1 being the best to 13 being the bottom. Aprilia, 16%, they're number 1. Suzuki at 40% is number 2. Moto Guzzi with 41.6% is number 3. Indian at 41.9% is number 4. Yamaha at 45.9% is number 5. Number 6 is Kawasaki at 50%. Number 7 is Triumph at 51%. Number 8 is Ducati at 59.6%. Number 9 is BMW at 95.9%. Royal Enfield is 10th at 100%. Honda is 11th at 214.5%. And Harley Davidson is 12th at 230.8%. And KTM is last at 250%. 256%. This is telling you that Honda, Harley, and KTM really had a really high number of complaints to their ratio of recalls. They didn't do a very good job of getting the recalls out before the customers were complaining. That's what all this is. So I hope that this is, it's a little snapshot of those 5 years. Like I said, things could have changed. So this is my take on it.
Now here we go. Less than an hour after I got here, get the new tire on, and Bob's your uncle. Saw some interesting motorcycles in there. Very nice 40th anniversary ZX 1400R. I didn't realize it was 40 years. Hope you enjoyed the video on the recalls, the little information about recalls and complaints. I think one of the people in there agreed with me about KTM. One of the people that work there, they sometimes wait till they get way too many complaints before they do a recall. That's just a shame. Join me and my friends at Flat Cap Cafe Racer for riding and racing. Please subscribe.